Everybody bring a chair.
We're starting, sorry. I don't know about everybody here. I'd like to call the finance meeting to order. 5:40. I'm going to ask Kate Knetter if she would mind taking the minutes. As far as I can see, we have all our committee members here. That being said, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mike Weaver, who reports to the agenda.
Thanks, Rich. I just wanted to really quick introduce two people.
Mike, sorry.
You have to look now, this way, because we're not freaking out.
How's that better?
Yes.
Two people I just wanted to introduce real quick. Joanne, who's with us from the city, she's been helping us out with the 2023 audit. And my replacement from my former role, Angela Walsh, is here as well.
Okay. Welcome, and nice to meet you.
We're very lucky to have both of them. So just to look, everyone should have a packet printed out here. It's also made available electronically. The first item on the agenda is the June 24 financials. The month of June was something a little bit odd. The expenses were higher than usual. And as you'll see in the packet, that's because certain bargaining agreements allow for certain employees to receive a lump sum payment at the end of the year. So in one of the payrolls in June, the last one, some of the staff receives a lump sum. So you'll see that the amount for the month was $26.3 million, which is typically higher than our previous averages. From a year-to-date perspective, for a budget of $150.6 million, we came in at 154.3 in expense with another $4.6 million encumbered. And that leaves us with a $720,000 favorable variance for the end of the year, for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024.
Anybody have any questions?
Do we get to keep that?
I will bring it up at the next item.
Okay.
Also, just so you know, at the end of the year, each school system has to file an EFS financial report, and that has been done 2 days early than is required. So that's great.
Good job.
And that will be audited by a separate accounting firm. We do not have to have our RSM audit report because whatever it is, we're using the auditor who did it last year, so he's going to do it again this year.
Juanita? Yeah, I also want to thank you, publicly for the amount of work and time. I know you've been under a tremendous amount of stress to get the audits done. I understand the 22 audit's been completed. You're working on 23. And the reason I say that because I believe today there was an article in the paper about the bond rating in Danbury, and again mentioning the fact that the city hasn't had the audits completed for 2022, 23, 24. I guess to be submitted. So we understand the stress that you're under, and I certainly appreciate all you're doing. So
Thank you.
I apologize, I'm not the chair this meeting. I forget.
I too want to add to what Rich has said. Mike, Ed, welcome. Thank you for the time that you both put in. And it is my goal to work closely. What I always try to put out about myself is that I ask a lot of questions because I need to understand from my own point of view what is going on. So one of the things that I look forward or will be looking forward to seeing is reminding that I am not an accountant, nor do I have expertise or skills in finance, but I am here and under the training of CAPE, I'm attending their finance series and I've learned a lot. One of the things that they reminded me as a board member is to ask as many questions as you can. And so that's what you'll get from me. One of the things that I would love to have us work together on is making sure that the financial reports are at a level that we all understand. And so when we have things like the initial narrative, I would love to see a little bit more detail, especially information on what took place that month. So when I went back and looked at the June financial report and was it June? May financial report, I couldn't understand why some of the encumbrances, that row, I have questions about that. I'll hold off to ask that. But I think one of our goals is going forward is we want to develop a 3-year financial plan. And so I will continue to ask questions looking toward that goal.
Great.
Thank you. And to pick up on that, Mike, it's important that the narrative speak to the statement. And I often use the phrase with you is the KISS concept, is to keep it simple. One of the things that I would have liked to have seen here, my question is going to be, in the May meeting, when we looked at the operational part of the budget, we had a negative balance of $300,000 plus or minus, and then we had the $600,000 allocation, which we were all happy and sharing at that time. That would give us a positive 300, and I think the number was 320, but it was a positive number, and John Spang felt comfortable that we'd wind up in a black. Now when I'm looking at this, we're looking at a favorable 720, 719, 720,000. Assuming we add the 600,000 to that, so that's $1 million plus $1.2 million, thereabouts. That's a big swing. And
No, the 600,000 is above the line. There's a,
the expenses are there, but the allocation for the money that
We moved the budget up as well, so if you look at the budget column, in the total, you'll see the total budget for the fiscal year is $150,602,000.
It was difficult to break all that down into separate accounts, so that's why it was added in, as it says, additional appropriation was added into the budget. So 719 is the final
719 would be the net.
net, correct? Which is 0.4% of the budget, which is fantastic.
Right. So that's a nice swing. And getting back to my point is a narrative to explain that favorable jump, would be good. Would be good going ahead. I'm still unclear in terms of when you say you adjusted the budget for the 602. I see that. Normally, and I missed that point. I would prefer to keep things as is, only because as we look at the past, 11 months worth of statements, we always had a budget of the 150. So I know it's footnoted, but sometimes it's just easy to keep
You
it.
can blame me for that one.
Yeah, and to keep it original.
I forced Mike to do that.
Yeah, it's one of my comments that I've had in the past is that the numbers kept changing, and there was no fluency, to it for consistency. So but the 700 is a good number, and in terms of maybe you can elaborate as to how it became so favorable. in terms of what we found in the last month. It wasn't that we had, less expenses, so there has to be something that affected accruals or encumbrances.
Yeah, so again, we're on the cash basis, so we don't have accruals in here, but I think this, your question kind of relates to the question prior, and it really is around encumbrances. So the year-to-date expenses are kind of the year-to-date expenses, but as the year progresses, our purchasers put in requisitions that then become POs with an expectation that that PO is going to be the exact amount that's going to be utilized. Sometimes those POs are a little over, sometimes they're a little under, and in some cases, the purchase orders are not used at all. So then those purchase orders are canceled, and that you'll see that will lead to a favorable variance because you think you're going to spend it, but you don't.
So essentially here, what we're doing is in 1 month doing basically a cleanup of purchase orders that may not be completed or may not be used or.
Yes, it's hard to tell if the purchase orders that we have in the system are actually going to be utilized. So we don't really cancel them out until we really have to at the end of the year when we close, and that's when we'll typically say, okay, well, this purchase order's been open for 9 months, nothing's hit it, and we haven't ordered anything, so we can go ahead and close that purchase order, and then that would lower your encumbrance to a more favorable variance.
Would that be something that during the course of the year we could monitor? I mean, if we were issuing a purchase order, I don't know the mechanics of who issues the purchase order, but let's say Mike issues a purchase order for $1 million to buy paint, to paint the buildings or something. And it's open 6 months down the road, you're looking at it and then there's no expense to get it, we got a favorable variance. I mean, at that point, some sort of a review, maybe 6 months, would say, hey, Mike, is this going to be done? And Mike would say, no, I'm going to cancel it or reduce it from $1 million to 500, so that we don't get these surprises.
And standing operating procedures is you do that maybe in January and then in March.
Yeah.
You send a note out to all the principals and say, okay, here's school specialty is open. And what are you going to do?
Right.
We're going to close it. So that's what you do. So you give them, January, February, and then in March, April, you close them out.
Okay, so long as we follow some procedure like that, we don't get big swings or surprises. Okay, good. All I want to be is on a track to having more meaningful statements. And in the past, my complaint has been basically for the last 3 years, these variants have been so screwed up that they've been meaningless. So the only thing I ever followed was a net number on the bottom, is to hope that year end, that at least the net number would be a positive number. And if we do, it's no reflection on you guys, but if we do a better job in the application of the budget and the expenses toward the budget, then we can have meaningful dialogues on variances each month. So that's good. Thank you. Is there any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I can give you a real-world example of that if you'd like. We typically have an open PO for something like camera repairs. This way, if a camera goes down, we can just quickly get it repaired, and have the service call done without having to go through the whole process again. So we'll open a PO, say for $5,000 or $10,000. I don't know how many cameras are going to break down on me over the course of the year, so but that is a very common example of how things.
Sure. I mean, there are standard POs and stuff like that, but it's okay, so long as it's monitored and it's reviewed. Not that let's see here. Teresa.
I just want to point out it wasn't screwed up. It was at the request of the previous committee, Finance Committee, to change those figures to accommodate not seeing negative balances, that type of thing. There was a purpose behind it. It wasn't screwed up.
Okay. The next question is, this is more of a political question. In the beginning of the year, we collectively, the administration, board members, before an ad hoc committee. And at that time, there was a lot of hullabaloo about the budget being 154 million, should have been 154 million. And then the budget came out with 150 million. And a short time after, John Spang, Kevin Walton went before this ad hoc committee and said, look, we're not really sure of our expenses this year, and we'd like the ability to be able to draw down some reserves that we have up to about $3 million. So it's almost a request that says, if you would give me sort of an opportunity to draw down, if I needed it, up to $3 million. So that sort of led people to believe that expenses were going to be higher than a proposed budget that was there. Now we're turning back. It's going from perception of needing $3 million or a possibility of needing $3 million. We now have a very favorable balance of $700,000. So a couple of questions. How did we refund this to the city? Did we give it back to them with stipulations or reserves? The city would apply it to reserves, or we just give it back carte blanche and say, here, it's excess monies, number one. And then how do we explain the shift from the perception I said earlier for this to a more positive number that I'm happy that we have? But I'll preface it by saying, in the past couple of years at our council meetings, when it's budget time, council members have gotten up and criticized us for not knowing what we're doing. They're saying that we overinflate the budgets and things like that because we always ask for a lot of money and then we never use it all and we give them back millions of dollars. Okay, I think that's a misstatement because as far as I know, the only time we gave back millions of dollars was during COVID years, which were justifiable. But I'm concerned in terms of, number one, the stipulation at which we give back the money, and number two, how do we defend that position?
Yeah, so for the first question, that's actually going to be addressed by Ed in a moment under the number two, the legislative update on how the money is returned. But I think it's important to know that there's a distinction between need and use. So the reason that they're favorable is because in the middle of the year when we realized that there was going to be a crunch, the cabinet made certain accommodations that were restricting spending that allowed us to come in at a more favorable variance at year end.
So you're saying that the bulk of this is attributed to our cost-cutting controls and...
For example, yeah, we put a spending freeze in place mid-year last year, which is a little bit earlier than I think is typically done. And in addition, there were several positions that were vacated that were not backfilled, which also leads to salary and benefit savings.
Okay. All right, I'm not going to get into because John Spank's not here, Kevin Walton's not here, so I can't get into the minds of why they came up with the other thought process. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Great. Next item on the agenda.
Next item is number two, legislative updates, non-lapsing accounts. Ed is going to address that for us.
I'll give you two, sorry. This item with regarding non-lapsing accounts has been on the books for a number of years, but it's always been on the books that the boards of ed would have to go to the city. So CASBO and a number of other organizations finally decided that it's changed. So as of this June, the boards of ed can have their own account, bank account, for lapsing funds, which means you can save up to 2% of your budget in a reserve account that does not have to be, asked to the city. Boards of Ed set it up, and that's what we're doing now. Mike is already going. So the Board of Ed, the next meeting has to approve to set up a bank account for this non-lapsing funds. So what's going to happen there is, one, in this year's budget, everybody thought that the high school would be open, the new high school. So it was not open. So there was $1.4 million in the budget.
Right.
So the Board of Ed will approve that to move it into this new account, so that when it starts opening, you can use it for moving expenses and so forth. So that's a good thing. And then whatever you have 720, you would probably put some of that money into that account, because you're only allowed to put up to 2% of the 150 million in that account. So this has been working on for a number of years. It's always been, you had to go to the town, the Board of Finance or whatever, to say, okay, can you take this money and so forth. So it's a great assist for boards of ed around the state.
Sir,
I thought we were going to move into, start moving in next spring. That was the plan.
So the latest update is they were concerned about that. They're no longer comes in the spring. It looks more like the summer. So we'll have we'll be moving in closer to the end of school during the summer, and we'll be able to, our expenses will incur at that time.
The other thing in this 23-24 budget, every year there's an IBNR, which is incurred but not reported insurance expenses. Every year, Board of Ed has a purchase order for 7 weeks, 6 to 7 weeks of insurance expenses, because we do not get those bills until next year. So we have asked the city, which is the budget. The purchase order was set in September, because that's what we knew at Gallagher, what the IBNR would be. So 2.5 million is designated in the internal service fund, which is designated for the risk management Board of Ed self-insurance. So that is your fund for 2.5 million in case your self-insurance, medical, dental, and pharmaceutical claims are more than anticipated. So that IBNR is done every year, incurred but not reported, because you can get somebody in May or June for a huge claim that's going to be paid out in July, August, and September. So that's what that money is used for.
that money is that, bring that up, for the new account, for the new unrestricted funding that we have. I'm sure we'll have a running total and accounting of that, but it's been in the past another confusion as to what our reserves are. And I remember last year going through the city and with Spang to pull hairs to get them to confirm the reserve balances, both that were on books and what the Board of Ed or what the administration came up with. And there were monies in there that were part of monies for health insurance that was set aside for that. But I always thought that money was set aside out of the positive leftover. In other words, out of the positive fund balance that you had. So if you had $700,000 that you positive that year, you would say $500,000 would go against the self-insurance account, and if you didn't have any other needs, for 200,000 would go to the city. So how does this other situation?
This one going on, it's not new. It's in the 2021-22 audit. You look at it, it's the internal service fund. And right now, as of 2022, there's $9.2 million in that fund.
Is this just become a bookkeeping entry, so that becomes like a light bulb? So it has nothing to do with actual cash that's set aside, it's just a recording a liability. Is
Right,
that
but
correct?
recording the dollar amount
Right.
that we're putting in there.
Sure.
So we
Okay, I could understand the accounting transactions,
Yeah.
okay. That's different from where if the law didn't change, it's 700,000.
Correct.
Right, oh, okay.
That's two different ideas.
Exactly, I'm clear on that.
We must put this into that internal service fund
Yes.
designated for insurance.
Okay.
The
So,
other fund
is ours.
is the Board of Ed, and what I would recommend, you approve it next month, and then Mike would give you a list of what we could use it for next year or the year after.
Yeah, okay, so,
So can I just ask a clarifying question? I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure I understand the points that you all are making. There's an IDNR account that exists at the city level,
Correct.
and that is where all of the unused insurance, self-insurance money has been deposited.
Right, the IBNR is deposited into that account.
And so if we get claims,
Above
further
your
into the
limit,
new
you can use that money.
above our limit, meaning we start the new year and we haven't fulfilled the claims from last year because they haven't come through, can we then use that money
Yes.
for those things?
Yeah.
And is there an accounting of that at our level?
If we would account for it, of course, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's an account currently at the city level. Do you know what the total is on that account now?
Yeah, the account as of the audit report of 2022,
Two.
right, is 9.6 million.
So we have to wait until the city goes through its audit process for 23 before we can get an accurate number for
Right.
where that account is right now, correct? Okay, and then the city also has received funds from us that we've returned to them for, that they've been holding in what we refer to as our reserve account.
Not this year. but
Not this year,
no,
because
but
of
if
the
somebody there's a
legislation,
balance.
but in previous years,
Oh,
we
right.
had.
Okay, I wasn't here, so I don't know
Right, right.
what that is, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, I just was wondering if it would come up.
So, to Kate's point, and I was mentioning that before, I think that's, and just to backtrack a little bit, my comments earlier about John Spang and Kevin going before the council asking for the $3 million, that $3 million was against monies somehow that we returned over a period of time that was there for us. And although the sum of money was greater than 3, they were just saying, if we go into the red, rather than the city giving us an appropriation, let us utilize our reserve or kitty. You weren't here, you're right, but I think, Mike, it's something you should follow up on, is to make sure there's a clear understanding on both sides as to what those numbers are, because we don't want that. I mean, you're new and Dan is new, and it was like pulling teeth to, it was like pulling teeth last year to finally get them to approve the number. So, and this way we're all on the same page. Of course, as I said, and one other thing I want to say, I do apologize because I didn't read this carefully about the money's being put back in New Jersey. That was an oversight on my part. So I apologize for the oversight and not reading it too closely. So this makes life a little bit easier for us.
Mrs. Janelli, Kate has a question.
Sorry, Rich, I just have one other question. You were talking about the money that can be set aside now based on this new state edict that we can set aside the money. And you referenced, was it 1.4 million for the schools? So that's encumbered in our balance currently?
Correct. It's
And we're
encumbered.
going, given that we did not use that money this year, that's going to be transferred to this fund.
Right, so you can use it next year for when you open up the new high school.
Okay. Are there any other monies that are encumbered currently that are also have not been used out of this last budget cycle, 23, 24?
Well, just to let you know, there are still outstanding bills, 23, 20, just signed bills for $40,000 in electricity. We just finally got June's bill. So there's a number of those, a couple of special ed bills.
Right.
So, you know,
We're waiting for those to resolve before
Correct.
we go
Right.
further.
Yes.
Okay, and typically, how long does that take, just so that we know?
well, you would love to finish everything in August, but it ain't happening. Sorry for that. Okay. We just got, you know, when you get the bill this week, well, the end of last week for 40,000 for, even though we encumbered the money's encumbered, you know, that means the encumbrance will go down and so forth. So we're still paying 20, 23, 24 bills that are really encumbered.
Okay. And the money will just sit there until we get to a point where we're gonna just,
Transfer it over.
yeah, okay, thank you.
So could I say that this statement will be a draft and not a final statement until we
Correct.
cross the, dot the i's and cross the
Right,
t's?
right, but I would love for you, after the next board meeting, to approve the account and to move at least 1.4
Sure,
million as
sure.
an encumbered. And then we can wait till, see what the other, you know,
Details.
Details.
Yeah, Rich, and to your point, there are still, also, there are still, as we go through the audit for 2023, there are still entries that are made, bookkeeping entries, that are done to close out
Right.
that year, so.
Anything that would have a material effect, will be reflected in the next statement and explained on each part. Teresa?
You had brought up the fact about Kevin and John going in front of the city, asking if we could draw down as needed the reserve money. Does that still apply going forward?
I really don't know, and I've asked the question and nobody has an answer to that as to whether that's an open ad hoc committee situation. I would have thought that at some point it would be closed and, simplistically put, from my point of view, it's just to say that we didn't need it and just let it go. But, so I don't really have an answer for you on what the status is. All I know is that, as I said, it's an open ad hoc committee that was requested. I don't think we ever got an answer except that they were going to think about it, and they asked John for a list of some expenses that he thought would contribute to what he was looking for in terms of that negative balance. So I don't know really what transpired.
Can we find out somehow?
I guess, Mike, I prefer the administration to do it rather than me get involved. It's not my area, but Mike can find out from Dan what the political things are and what to do. It might be necessary that they resolve it, but I would ask Mike O'Cara to pursue that.
And if we still can have it, can we slip it into that new account?
If we still can have it, the chances you getting it like maybe 6-2 more. That ain't happening.
I know.
I have a question for Ed. In your experience, and maybe even with Kara, do we generally not get statements, invoices, bills until a much later date?
correct. Just for instance, special ed tuition. Okay,
Yeah.
the child is there on June 30th, let's say.
Okay.
And they don't give us that bill until almost August 1st.
And I think the bus contract too is late too, right?
And utilities.
Yeah, utilities, yeah.
Just-
So you would think they'd be
Running.
more up on the ball.
We also get, just have been working here for years, we also get odd bills that just show up that have been circulating. They were sent to the wrong business, they were sent down the street. And so sometimes things get lost in the shuffle from, on the billing standpoint, and you'll get, the occasional oddball bill that shows up.
Well,
But generally, we get phone calls for payment, but
here's another one.
some things do come in late.
I got a bill that was dated 2020,
Yeah.
no way we're paying it.
Yeah,
Just let you know,
Yeah.
those books have been closed,
right,
gone, send them a note. You're gonna have to eat it,
yes.
we're not paying the 2020 bill.
Right.
Does anybody have, any committee members have any questions? Okay. That being said, it's very interesting. Last week and the week before, I learned something very interesting, that in committee meetings, and historically, at this particular point, the chairperson, including myself, and I think other chair people, the committees, would generally ask other board members who are not on the committee if they had any questions. And we were informed that that was a no-no, that the general statement should be anybody attending this particular meeting, being a board member or an outsider, had the right to ask a question. So I just wanted to clarify that for the two people that are in the audience, or the gentleman there. So it goes out to say, are there any other questions from the public that way regarding this particular presentation?
I think we have one more item, Rich.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
And number 3 is listed on the agenda as student activity account update, training and guide. That is also going to field as one, yes, handouts.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Oh, thanks.
So, we've been working on updating and helping the principals and the secretaries of what student activities are, what is needed to be sent to their business office and so forth. So we've met with all of the elementaries, secretaries and principals. We met with all the middle school secretaries and principals. The high school principal we didn't meet with. We met with the bookkeeper, who's excellent, and we met with her alone to go over these items. So in your packet, it's 2 different, almost similar things that we're discussing. One is a manual for the principals and so forth. We still have to update a little bit. And the second one is student activities bookkeeper, what they have to send to Angela, who will be watching out on the all of the items. And Angela has experience in student activities, and again, student activities is for students. So you have something.
Through Richard, though, Richard, if I could just say a word
Sure.
about this. Thank you. You know, one of the, and you'll see it in the board goals in another presentation, but one of the things that was very quickly needed in the spring that we realized was to put in some control systems. You know, we've had an incident around student activity. And so in terms of financial controls, that's going to be part of the goals moving forward, is that we have manuals that exist, things that are written down. You know, we've had folks that have worked here for a long time, and so when they do leave, they take a lot of institutional knowledge with them. And so it's imperative that we write down the kind of rules of engagement and procedures, so that not only does it serve as training, but it also serves as a guide for our processes and your policies. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to kind of make the connection about the kind of the work towards cleaning up some just procedural things that needed to happen. And Ed and you know did a phenomenal job of facilitating that work behind this and getting that on track, so I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay, and we just have, we're gonna update it because I have a couple of questions about gifts and gift cards and reimbursements, and it's all in here, so we may update the numbers, but everybody, all the principals, secretaries have seen it, we've gone through it. They really like it. There was one secretary who was in the middle school, she went to the elementary school, Jen, who did a lot of work on herself. We carved out items that she had, which were great. So I think this will help. Angela knows about it. She's great at student activities. So we get the bank statements, copy the bank statements, through everything that should be going through it. And there's a number of items as you go through it that have to be sent in and attached and so forth. So a better way of dealing with this. It was, it's just updating what was in the past. So which is great. So.
How many bank accounts do we have? I'm sure, inclusive of these accounts.
I would say probably 40 or 45.
Really?
It's several, yeah, each school has a student activity account. The Board of Education has 5 accounts where they're operating between school and shared services, grants, and then the operating and payroll accounts for the general fund. And then in addition, there are also, in with those student activity accounts, even though they're not technically student activity accounts, are bank accounts for, usually in the high school for various scholarships and things of that nature.
What about money that you get for like grants? Is that over and above that, or is that included in?
That's in one of the 5 accounts, which is technically owned by the state. So the grants fund has its own bank account.
And will obviously require bank reconciliations. So it's fair to say that at the end of any audit period, one of the check boxes you do is bank reconciliations are completed.
Correct. And prior, I think they were being done on an annual basis to satisfy that requirement. Moving forward, starting in fiscal year 23, we're having them done by month.
Yeah, which is good. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ed. Anybody else have any questions?
I would just like to say, Ed and Mike, and to the superintendent, these 2 documents is well written.
Goodbye.
That we needed it
Yes.
because people have gotten slack in their
Well, I don't know
doing
if
what
it's
they were
lax, it
supposed
was
to do.
just updating things, understanding certain things.
Right.
You know, I mean, so if you've done it in the past, they continue to do it. So this just says, oh, maybe we should do it this way instead of that way.
Right.
So it's just,
And I applaud you for doing this way. And I know we are few in numbers as far as trying to read through this, but when you have a minute at 2:30 at night, when you get it and read it when you have some time.
Instead of
And,
texting
very
me
good.
already.
And our
I'll be up.
our finance team, I really like to applaud the new ladies. I've never met you before, but I welcome you to our team. My last suggestion is, and I hope that Ed and Mike and the superintendent will call a meeting with the mayor. It's September. Sit down and start explaining to them the procedure that we want into for the budget. So we won't be down to City Hall every year saying we need this. And what I learned over the workshop is, and we have never said this as long as I have been on the board, we always said this is the superintendent's budget. Once that budget is finalized, it's the board's budget. Okay? So now we can stop saying that. It's not just the superintendent. Everybody said, well, superintendent put this together on behalf of the board. No. at a workshop we learned, it's the board budget. Once the superintendent has completed and shifted over to us. So I hope that we can meet with the mayor and his committee and the finance team and the superintendent will start working with the mayor and his team. So we won't go into the holidays coming up in January and everybody, you know, at the same point we were last year.
Thank you. And his final thought, one of the things that I'd like to accomplish is that the comments, I'm not saying criticisms that we make, are to the end so that the financial statements are easier to understand and read. Not for me to dominate the conversation because I have a little bit more of an accounting background than maybe some of the other people, but that the actual layman could understand it, and I think that creates more interest and more conversation into the statements. So we get more sort of a bang for our dollar. So you know, again, I keep it on a keep it simple, stupid concept. If we could just in the future try to know the audience that we're dealing with, that's good. But I thank you again for everything that you have done and continue to do. We're moving ahead. It's in the right direction, and I'm personally very happy. So, at this point, then I'll ask if there is any other comments by anybody in the audience. Go ahead, Carol.
I have one question, and it's just maybe for clarity. With the new account, is there any expiration, once those funds come to us? Are there any restrictions or expiration
No.
on when you can use the funds?
You just should know what you're gonna use them for.
Sure.
And you can always change that use with the board, you know, let's say you wanna, I don't know, buy 50 cameras, all of a sudden you don't need 50 cameras, you only need 25, and so the board would say, okay, you can only use 25, and the rest of the money should be used for something else. It should be designated what you're using it for.
Thank you.
But it's a moving designation.
Right, because you never know. You know,
Exactly.
something occurs that we didn't realize.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
That being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second by
Second.
Teresa. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.